Okay, well, I'll just say that in a minute.
Okay, we are live on YouTube.
Thank you.
I'm gonna run and get a calendar. I apologize. I'll be right back.
Okay, should we go ahead and call the meeting? Do you want to wait a minute, Bob, or should I go ahead?
I'd say we go ahead and call it to order, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Welcome all. And first of all, it is 10:01. This is, can't even think what the date is.
May
What's
6th.
the-
May
May
6th.
6th, May 6th,
6th.
2020. And I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Shelton, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Weber,
Here.
Mr. Aiken,
Here.
Mr. Conrad,
Here.
Mr. Goldberg,
Here.
Mr. Frederickson,
I'm here.
Mr. Wislinski,
Here.
Mr. Proust,
Here.
Mr. Roberts, Mr. Perot.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we do have a quorum. And as we want to be recognized and okay, so we want to be recognized since most of us, I only have 9, and welcome Mayor. Mayor Dalton just joined us. And maybe he's not on audio yet. If you will, Bob, if you see somebody who's trying to get recognized and I don't see him, can you point that out? Okay.
Certainly.
Mayor Dalton, welcome. Are you on?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. We did just have roll call. We do have a quorum. And we do have a, okay, so we do have a quorum. Okay, Mayor Dalton, do you have time for a while? I know we want to have a moment to hear from you. Do you have ability to stay on, or would you rather speak now?
No, I appreciate you scheduling this meeting as quickly as possible, and I have blocked out time to participate as long as I can. So.
Okay, thank you. Then I believe everyone received the minutes via email. Have you had a chance to review those? And do we have are there any changes, or do we have a motion to approve? Hearing, seeing, no.
Let me make it. Can I make a comment? This is Oz Conrad.
Sure.
I don't know whether minutes need to reflect it or not. But as you recall, those of you who were at the last meeting, on item number 8, I requested an updated analysis of town square cost. We haven't received one in some time, and I recognize the financial staff has been very busy, so not having one at this meeting, I guess, is not that big a deal. But I think I'd like to see an updated analysis of the cost like we used to get several months ago.
Okay,
Yep,
Well-
Madam Chair, I respect and appreciate Mr. Conrad's comments. I recall that discussion, and we are completely committed to it. If he wants to make a motion to amend the minutes to reflect his request, and I would gladly second it and support the fact that we get that presentation gathered together and made. I think we talked after the meeting about really starting with former Alderman Malin Smith's analysis and then updating it from there, because it was a pretty comprehensive review of the costs, which was good, very educational to the board. And then, like Oz suggests, it needed to be updated to include the most current expenditures and, in my opinion, future commitments that we've made by virtue of building that community asset. So I appreciate the comment and completely support it.
okay. Ms. Conrad, would you like to make that motion?
I'll make such a motion if you think it would be helpful.
Okay, and Mayor, you second it, correct?
I'll second that.
Okay, so with that additional information, can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, and is Ashley on? I don't see her, or
No,
no. Okay.
But Morgan is taking minutes, or
She is.
taking.
Front and center.
Okay, those in favor to approve signify by saying aye or wave your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, seeing none, we have that. Okay, and
Madam Chairman,
yes,
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
that motion was made by Mr. Conrad
Okay, Thank you.
and seconded by the mayor. Okay. First of all, then, Mayor, well, we do have the agendas, but would you like to go ahead and give us some comments? Is that
Sure.
to your convenience?
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
As everyone on this commission knows, and anyone in City Hall, in our community knows me and my style, I rely very heavily on the commissions across the board. They are very, very useful think tanks for making the best possible decisions. Well, I think it goes without saying, or if it doesn't, then I'm going to emphasize the fact that we need the Ways and Means Commission now more than ever. It has always guided us well and served us well, but we've never found ourselves in these sorts of times, and we need to be very smart in making decisions. We have been working, as Oz suggested, the finance department has been very, very busy analyzing, gathering available data, analyzing that data, and helping the board make the best possible decisions. Right now, there aren't a whole lot to make other than to really set policy. And Mr. Shelton and his team have, which has included naturally Ms. Wrights, but also our city clerk and the department heads, to set policy. And that policy is to critically analyze all of our expenses, to cull out those that aren't absolutely essential. And by essential, I mean either paying a current obligation that we have committed to previously. We are not going to default on our debts. Number two, maintaining the city's essential services. And I think we all know what that is. And number three, making smart decisions that we can afford and prevent increased costs down the road. So, saying those things and doing it are two different things, and our staff has been very good at guiding the board in analyzing our warrant thus far. I have been very committed to not following some of our sister cities across the region and making furloughs, staff salary adjustments, or other changes in our professional team. And the reason we're able to make that decision, take that position, is based upon how we've structured our operations for many, many years. And that is that we work largely through contractual relationships and other outside service providers. And we keep a very modest team in place. But we need every man and woman on that team now. And that will be the last place we look for additional savings. We have very substantial reserves. They are going to be reduced as we deploy them in support of our city functions. But we are in a better position than many of our peer cities, and that has not come about by accident. So with that background, maybe PM can give us kind of an overview of the high, medium, low assessment that we've done. And you can see from that, before we get into the specifics, you can see from that we have done a good job of preparing ourselves, that we are going to deploy some of our resources, and that those reserves will be less tomorrow than they are today. But that's what they're there for. When we lost Walmart, things changed in the city. It was an enormous source of revenue for us, and we needed to deploy some of our reserves at that time. Obviously, this is a much more challenging time for all the obvious reasons, but the finance staff, under the leadership of Mr. Shelton and the rest of the team, are on top of it, analyzing data and helping the board make data-driven decisions, not emotional decisions. Although we are called upon to change course without that thought and analysis, and we're resisting those inquiries and suggestions and staying the course that we have mapped out and that we will review during the rest of today's agenda. Ms. Reitz, did I put you in a tough spot, or can you kind of give an overview of what the team at City Hall has analyzed, and the report that we gave to the Board of Aldermen that I know is before the Ways and Means Commission now, and then we'll be done with our remarks, Madam Chair, and you can turn it back to you for action.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We did send out our kind of initial estimates, I believe, to the board or to the commission about a week ago. So I wanted to just kind of reiterate that these were estimates that I did a couple weeks ago. I've been doing some kind of mental revisions in my mind, but I'll go over kind of my basis for what I've started out with, and want to let you know that we will have some more sales tax data in about a week. And then I will do kind of a formal review and update of the estimates that we sent out. So what I have currently is I tried to do a best case, intermediate, worst case scenario. So my assumptions basically started with, obviously, with sales tax, because as you know, sales tax is our main source of revenue. So what I did is I assumed that starting in about mid-March, that we will drop in sales tax about 60%. And where that came from is that we looked at our vendors throughout the city and tried to determine, well, I mean, we just kind of decided which vendors were grocery store type vendors as opposed to other businesses. Grocery stores are still seeming to do, or I would assume are still doing kind of normal, maybe even more business. So we assumed that, and they're about 40% of our tax base, kind of on average. Now that includes Target. So now Target is probably mostly doing groceries and not a lot of other stuff. We won't know that. I won't have any kind of details on the individual vendors until closer to the end of May. But I started with that kind of an immediate assumption that we would drop about 60%. So
Pam?
since,
Pam,
yes,
does that include total wine and more too in your grocery numbers?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Does that include total wine and more in your grocery numbers?
Total Wine and More?
Yeah,
I don't believe so.
okay.
Our planner, Ryan Spencer, put those numbers together for me, so I'd have to get the detail from him, but I do not believe so. I think it's that we were trying to figure out mostly food. So I assumed as starting mid-March that we would be reducing sales tax about 60%. So in the best case scenario, I had us that continue for all of April and all of May, and then going back to normal plus, because at that time I thought we would have kind of a pent up demand and things would rebound, not only back to normal, but people would be going out and doing more shopping. Again, I've revised that in my mind. So then our intermediate scenario, and it's 60% down for each month still in each scenario. And then, sorry, Morgan, yeah.
Ryan just stopped by and informed me that Total Wine was included in.
It was?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then my kind of intermediate case scenario was that things would be closed down for April. Let me get my lines here. Half of March, all of April, and and all of April. So half of March, March and April, and then going back to normal for the May collections. You have to remember that what we receive each month at the beginning of the month is for is 2 months in arrears. So what we received in sales tax the beginning of May was for February. So what we receive, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. What we receive in May will be for March. So that'll be our first kind of look at what actual results are. So so that was kind of my intermediate, was that we would still be down for all of May, which we would get in July, and then back to normal with a slight rebound. Worst case scenario, I have that the shutdown continues through June with no rebound. we know we'll have to update those a little bit. So with those assumptions, our total revenue loss then would be about 2 million in the worst case scenario. Sales tax now is all I'm talking about. Best case scenario, we'd be down about 850,000. Worst case scenario, down about 2 million. And then we have to look at I just looked at a couple other things. I looked at our permit fees and just a couple that we know, like we know Maryville decided to postpone their big development where we were anticipating about 250,000 in permit fees. That was for a new dormitory, so that's kind of off the table for now. And then Missouri Baptist was also going to do a fairly large development. And I don't have a number on that, but that's also been postponed. So I took another 250,000 out. Then I assumed in parks that we would have rental loss there for about 3 months. And that would be pavilion rental, the house rental programs. And that doesn't total up to a lot of dollars, but I added that in. So we're starting off with, as you know, about $8 million in reserves. Our required reserve is 5.3 million. So our gap had been about $3 million. So now, even with the worst case scenario that I projected, we still have a gap of about, I'm sorry, getting my, let's see, with the reductions in the sales tax, we'd bring that gap down between what's required and what we have to about a $3 million gap. So next iteration of this, we'll see how much farther we dig into that. But at the moment, we have enough fund balance, even without dipping into our 50% reserves to cover the sales tax shortfall. So that's the revenue side. And then what we also looked at were things that we could cut out. So we went through kind of line by line each one of the budgets. So, you know, the general fund is the kind of tricky one, in that most of the expenses there are kind of their salaries, their general maintenance, their contracts that we have to continue. So just in going through the general fund, kind of taking 500 here and 1,000 there, we were able to bring that down only about $100,000. As you know, we went through a fairly extensive project process during the budget where we cut out significant kind of things that people wanted, but we couldn't really fit that into a structurally balanced budget. So general fund, we could cut out about 100,000. Road fund, we looked at projects there and things that we could cut back on. And I think we sent you the list. We came up with almost 200,000 there, not quite. Capital, 430,000, and then parks and stormwater, a little over 500,000. So those other funds, other than the general fund, it's a lot easier to reduce because we have kind of large projects that we can delay. And what we're trying to balance out is we don't want to cut something that's going to, in the long run, cost us more money. So we don't want it to totally neglect maintenance, but things like the window washing or how often we cut the grass or things like that. Those are things that if we delay them, do save us money. Where things like if we don't fix our heating and air conditioning, or if we don't fix something else, it could lead to bigger problems. So that's what we were kind of looking at when we were trying to decide what could be pushed out, what could be just eliminated for this year, and what will delay and maybe have to make a harder choice down the road. But at least we're not necessarily cutting it now. We're saying we'll revisit that in a couple months once we have a better feel for what our revenue situation is.
That was excellent. Madam Chair, I apologize for the interruption. I should have sought.
No, go ahead. No, go.
I
please.
wanted to make one observation, and then I will be done with the kind of the background. I think it's important to keep in mind how and at what level our required reserves were put in place. When I was the chairman as a member of the Board of Aldermen of this commission, we had no reserve requirement. And we enacted one under the recommendation of the then Finance Commission, which I chaired, had the privilege of chairing, and set it at 25% of an annual year's operating expenses. And that is significantly by a number of percentage points over the recommended required reserve, which, as we know from our Governmental Accounting Finance Officers Association, is 17%. We changed it in, as you may recall, I know it's been at least 5, 6, 7 years ago.
That's about right.
When a bill passed the General Assembly that prohibited cities from increasing their property tax rates in assessment years. So you can't be looking at an assessment coming up and say, oh, good, this is a time to go up with the assessed valuation and to crank the number a little bit. And so we thought, well, that means every other year. So the Finance Commission recommended and the board adopted doubling our reserve requirement, because we would not be able to, in a extraordinary time, reassess a property tax. We were already conservative. We were being ultra conservative in that instance, and I was completely supportive of it because I think that's the right way to be. But it's important to remember how we got to 50%, and that while yes, we're getting dangerously close to that, as Pam just outlined, we got to remember just how high that bar is. I am not Pollyannish. I get how extraordinary and dangerous times we are in right now, with the county executive announcing a return to work policy starting on the 18th of May. We are all hopeful that we will be able to do so safely and that this economy will come back, but we can't just assume the same. So we know where we are. We're continuing to assess the data regularly, as often as we can, and we have that reserve requirement, which starts at a very high level, and we will hopefully always stay above that. Should we get below that required reserve, that does not mean the end of operations. What that means is it just takes a supermajority vote of the Board of Aldermen to authorize that, to appropriate that expenditure. And so I think with that background, Madam Chair, you got to be done with me, and the meeting's back in your hands.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I very much appreciate the historical information, and you've been a part of this commission for many years. And I'd just like to say to everyone, it has been reassuring to get ongoing information from the mayor, from Mr. Shelton, from Pam. We've all talked frequently. I believe our board has had good information, as you can tell from Pam's comments, that these are all moving pieces, it seems like, kind of like the fan up above the mayor's head. It's going, rotating all the time. And so
Blades are
it's,
sharp, too.
pardon?
I said those blades are sharp too, so.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
I'm gonna keep my
And
head
I
down.
know, Mayor, that you've been a significant part of the mayoral groups. There's more than one around. So, you know, I think that I hear comments from people in other cities, and I'm reassured of our administration and the mayor and our staff. So I think that's something I hope we all appreciate. So, okay, and just to say, you talk about, and I'm going to get on my soapbox for one quick moment. We talk about looking at essential and non-essential. And I think a few months ago, I talked about discretionary and non-discretionary. And I think moving forward out of this situation, when we get back to the normal and the normal plus, which that's a good comment, because I think people, I would be happy to pay an extra few bucks to go to a nice restaurant. So there are a lot of shifts, but as we move forward, I think I often thought, why are we spending money on things that aren't essential anyway? So the budget process moving forward could be all very interesting. So having said that, any other comments? And I don't see any hands on my screen.
I just have a couple.
Okay, go ahead,
It's
Randy.
Randy. When is the fire contract negotiated, John? Is that in September, or when's the fire contract?
Yeah, Randy, that's a very, very good question. Until the world turned upside down with this pandemic, we were in the process of populating a task force to analyze our options right now. And unfortunately, that has become a lower priority, but it is one of our largest expenditure items that we need to be prepared for. So we're as soon as we get stabilized, we will return to that and hopefully make some decisions in the fall. I'm sorry, we'll get the task force populated as soon as possible, but then we will be making decisions in the fall, or recommendations anyway.
Okay, I mean, I'm hoping that the fire department manages to control costs a little, you know, so that the contract isn't a large increase, given what's going on. And I have just a couple more questions. One's about Briarwick, because you're going to vote on it tomorrow. Is that right, for the second reading?
On Monday, correct.
Monday. I'm wondering if they have any drop in price, because I was thinking asphalt with the price of oil going down. I just remember that several years ago when we were dealing with a new roof, prices were going down. I wondered if Briarwick could have any adjustment going down in that.
Okay, I've been told, Bob, if you want to jump in there with this too, but I've been told that oil is a very, like 9%, it's a very small part of asphalt, and I don't know the engineering of it, but that question was asked before. They cannot sign the final contract without knowing that we're not going to renege on our earlier commitment, so that there may be some adjustments. Bob, do you have anything else to?
I don't, Madam Chair, other than I agree with you. The question was definitely asked of the Brentwood subdivision if they should rebid it. They have reviewed it. Obviously, they want to get the best price. And I believe labor and other products, you're exactly right, or the most expensive part of the project compared to the actual petroleum product.
And one of the important things that came about last year, and it's a long time since we've been working on this, but was the timing. And I think Tim Gregowitz had helped with working with the Brenwick trustees, and just the timing of getting this work done. There was a cost improvement. So yes, that's something we hope we will be voting on Monday.
So those kind of, that it's not a significant portion, you're saying it's already probably been taken into effect.
Yes, and actually that's on our agenda. Do we want to, I mean, that's kind of the next thing on the agenda, I think. Let's see, Pam, did you have anything to add as far as how that SID factors into our investment asset accounts? Would this be an okay time?
Oops, sorry, I lost everybody there for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about this quite a bit, and my opinion with the SID and the 225,000 loan is that we had a maturity, a bond maturity, actually I think it was a CD, the beginning of March, that I did not reinvest with the anticipation that we would be doing this loan. The amount that I keep in our investment pool is about pretty much equal to what we have to keep, you know, our 50% kind of reserve requirement. So I'm sure, you know, and because I know it's money that we're not going to need in cash. So the 225,000 is not needed to support the current budget, even with our revenue reductions at this time. I mean, we'll certainly look forward to it, or look forward with it. But even at that, I feel that it would not be responsible financially not to reinvest that money. So if we don't do the loan, which we're going to get 3.5% interest on, I will have to go back out to the market, and I'm looking at, you know, when I looked at it about 2 weeks ago, the best I could do for 5 years was 1.3%. So my feeling is that it is a good investment. We don't need the cash at this point. So we need to look at it as an investment option rather than an expenditure, because with the expenditures, the money is gone, not anticipated to come back. This, yes, the cash is not available, but we will be getting it back. We'll be getting it back at the end of each year as part of their assessments, a part of the tax bill that we get back allotted to us, and we get the interest revenue, which we desperately need because our overnight interest rate is at 0.06% currently. So we don't want to leave more in cash than we absolutely have to.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? I don't see any.
Well, let me ask you a question. Are we into this as an agenda item right now?
Well, yes, I mean, I think I said, yeah, it was on the agenda, so let's go ahead, and that's.
Item number 4, yeah.
Yes.
So I had a question, why is it even on the agenda? We made a decision on this months ago. Why is it taking so long? As a matter of fact, I think the first presentation was when, in May or June of last year?
Yes, and I
Thank
believe.
you. Thank you. I think there's a lot of neighbors in Brenwick that are asking the same question.
Yes, and actually, this was on the agenda for the second, for a second read, or earlier this month. And since we have two new aldermen, one from Ward 1 and one from Ward 3, one of those individuals did not feel comfortable at this point being up to speed to make a decision. And so I think with respect to that situation, there was a continuance identified that we would do that.
Okay.
And that's why it didn't get voted on last time. And we should vote on it this coming meeting. Mayor, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you're absolutely right, Chairman. That is why the continuance motion was made. I think Mr. Conrad's point is still well taken, because it should have been handled long prior to even the last meeting. But we are where we are, and we hope for good things on Monday night.
Okay, thank you. And yes, we already committed to that. We passed the ordinance, and this is just the intergovernmental transfer. This is just transfer of funds, so they're there. So, okay. I think that does cover the agenda. Mr. Shelton, did you have anything else to add?
Nothing further.
Okay, I miss you sitting to my right because I can always just kind of whisper. Anything else? But anyway, it's great to see everyone. Yes, Pam?
I didn't mean to change.
Oh, Randy?
Just going down your minutes, I didn't realize it was item number 4 on your agenda, but I was, and that was in sequence with the letter. That's why I asked about prior rep. So I was still including it in her dated letter, April 21st. So I didn't want to change. I wasn't necessarily changing the sequence of things by asking that question, just happened to follow through in the notes. And I was going to ask 2 more things. When you know how we vote, when could Town and Country vote for an assessment? We already passed that we weren't going to do that, but when does that come up again? You know what I'm talking about? So that we don't assess any taxes for the next 2 years on residents.
Don't we do that, Mayor or Bob or Pam, every year with every budget?
In September.
Has to be done by September.
Yes.
Okay, so that'll come up again in September, that issue to discuss if needed. Okay, and
So
just one thing to keep in mind. For example, I saw my internist today, and she happened to make the comment to me that this COVID-19 could resurface again in the fall with the flu. So even though we're thinking June might come back from this, just leave that realization that might happen again in the fall. It might not only be shutting things down now, but it could happen in the fall. Just a thought in terms of being conservative.
Right. Well, and I think we've had, but as in the world we are, things could happen at any time. So beyond a virus. So I think not to discount your comments, I think that's something everybody is concerned about. And I think we're responding. It's just kind of what Pam and they've come up with. We have moving pieces all the time. And it's why everybody, I think, needs to be safe and responsible and do the best you can every day, because nothing is ever guaranteed for tomorrow. And that sounds really negative, and I don't mean that in a negative way. But no, I agree, Randy. It's where we are. But okay, any other comments, Mr. Shelton?
I have a question. Pam, and I apologize if you mentioned this, but I missed it. Of the $2 million loss in revenue we're expecting or we're thinking about, what percentage of that is from restaurants?
I don't know. I don't have that data now. We can see if we can glean that from our list of vendors.
Okay.
We'll
I
look at that.
could see that being the one thing that comes back very slowly, potentially at least. And so that would be helpful to know that.
Okay, I'll look at that.
Well, and to add on to that, where we can now, there are restaurants going curbside. And when you order out, please order a restaurant in Town and Country. That's the best thing we could do. They're great Chesterfield restaurants, but I'm sticking with my Town and Country list. And we're very fortunate. We have great places to eat. So, okay. Jeff, did you have? Oh, okay. All right. I don't think we have anything else with that. Would we have a motion to adjourn? And we will stay in touch and continue to share information. Do you have a motion?
I'll
Motion
move.
to adjourn.
I'd like to make a public service announcement when we're finished.
Okay, so you'll do that after Mr. Probst has a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have that motion is made and seconded. We're adjourned. And Mr. Conrad. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. And Oz,
Well,
those who didn't stay, we're listening to Oz.
being a poll worker, I get a lot of information from the Board of Election Commissioners. And this election probably is pretty much of a moot point because it's basically a municipal election. We all know it's been rescheduled, but they are reducing the number of polling locations from 369 to 156. They are not going to use they're going to try not to use any non-municipal buildings for the election. I guess Town and Country is a polling, the town hall, the city hall is one, I don't know. For example, John, you vote at Mahatma Gandhi, that's not going to be used. Those that vote on Mason Road at the Episcopal Church, that's not going to be used. And don't ask me what other locations are not going to be used. So I just thought I'd mention that. And I think the best thing to do is to vote absentee. And about the only thing left to vote on in Town and Country, when you get right down to it, is the sewer deal, which I'm not going to comment on.
Okay, thank you. And that makes me want to go make sure I haven't thrown away those documents so I can vote. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right,
care.
thank you.